The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, I just heard something saying the broadcast is now starting. I hope that that wasn't an issue and you guys were able to hear me all along. That was probably, I guess, a recording message or something. But anyways, Dr. Fayaz, if you can just give me a thumbs up, everything is fine, that would be great. Just gonna wait for a second here. Okay, so it looks everything is fine. Right, so I was talking about worldview, right? What is your primary question? What is the notion of world for you? If it's just about a company basically gathering up and earning a lot of worldly possessions, then it will be different. But if you see your worldview as a transit spot, as a way for you to not only invest in your current possessions, but also investing in your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and preparing for your journey during the grave, being a business class exit of this world and not a miserable state in the grave, as well as retiring in paradise and not ending up in the hellfire. If you also focus on earning the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which as the hadith Qudsi tells us that we keep getting closer and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by doing voluntary deeds. So the further the obligatory deeds gets us closest the most, but after that, as we keep using our time and resources and efforts into voluntary deeds that are pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we keep getting closer and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until He loves us. So this is the hadith that we discussed last time as well. And obviously in Surah Al-Asr, there are 4 pillars that are mentioned for success, and that are your faith, your righteous good deeds, and the 2 important components of basically encouraging each other, commanding each other for patience and for the haqq. So that's something very important for someone to be successful, that you're not going to be living in an island, but part of being successful is to convey the message to others, is to command, is to encourage, is to advise, and is to facilitate and try to facilitate guidance for other people. Another thing is basically once you have some sort of a project that you care about, it actually raises your quality of life. So you realize and you depend more and more on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for success. Your dua increases. Whenever you have a concern, a worthwhile concern, you become more conscious of your time. You do better time management. You do better personal development because you want to get better to achieve the mission that you're upon, and so on and so forth. So basically, if you were to summarize that, taking a project like da'wah helps you increase your love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, helps you attain a better status in paradise. It raises your standard. It raises things that you're focusing about. Your primary goal, your primary question shifts from criticizing others, talking about others, to thinking about the objective, to thinking about the mission, and for you to have friends and partners and allies who are with you upon that mission. So your quality of life dramatically improves. So now that we have talked about that, now let's try to understand what exactly are we doing. So if you decide to commit to the cause of da'wah, by the way, there are many other causes. I'm not saying that everybody should only be doing da'wah. To be fair, if any cause that you embark on, any voluntary cause that you embark on that you are passionate about, your quality of life will increase, you will attain the level of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so on and so forth. Obviously, da'wah being a very prime cause, something very dear and beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But regardless of that, once you start choosing that, okay, I want to participate in the field of da'wah, it's very important to be clear upon what is my goal. Is my goal only to create some interest? Okay, so that is something I can do by having a beard, or maybe walking in thobe sometime, or wearing my hijab, or praying in public, or fasting, letting people know I'm fasting, wearing a t-shirt, all that sort of stuff, very basic stuff, rewarding. And the goal will be I'm just creating some interest for people to find out more. Or my goal is to have dialogues, have conversations in which I'm conveying intelligently, confidently, and clearly and compassionately that this is the message of Islam, this is the truth about this world, this is the truth about your creator, and so on and so forth. So I just keep conveying. Or it could be very holistic, that I'm concerned with getting people connected to Allah one soul at a time. So it's not just about conveying or creating interest, but I'm focused on something deeper now, and that's my goal. So it's very important to realize what is your goal, because that's how your efforts will be defined as well. So once you have the goals, then how do you measure success? So is the success based on how many people you talk to, how many views your video get, how many clicks you get, how many flyers or Quran translation you just distribute, how many conversations you have. Okay, that could be a success metric. Another team or person can use a success metric of how many shahadas do I have. Or it could be like, okay, how many people am I developing after shahada? So they took the shahada, but are they connected to Islam or not? So that could be another another sort of metric. Another thing someone can use is that, look, I don't own the result, but what I really can own and what I really can contribute to, what I really have control on is basically, am I putting in consistent effort? And not just like weak effort. I'm growing myself, I'm running the techniques, I'm thinking about it, I'm continuously improving. So am I contributing consistent best efforts? And I don't mind if there's publicity or not. I don't mind if there's media coverage or not. I don't mind if a celebrity is joining me in this effort or not. I don't mind if I have a strong team working with me or not. But if my consistent effort is once a week, I'm going to commit an hour, then am I consistently doing that? So that's very important. And I would actually like to pause here for a second and give you guys an opportunity, whether you're attending live or watching the recording, to really let that sink in and think about what would your goal and metric be. And if you want to share it via the chat, I'd be happy to see what you guys are thinking. So that would be really appreciated as well. Okay, so let's move on. So now we have talked about that. So let's take a look at some of the risks, expenses, and wins. So I want you to think about something. If there's a business, a takeaway, a restaurant, a manufacturing plant, whatever, and they're having a lot of sales, the sales are huge, but there's no profit. They're not able to continue the business operations. There's not profit. So what could some of the reasons be for there not to be profit? Could anybody like to participate and share their thoughts via chat, please? Okay, so I hope everybody got a chance to think about it. So one reason could be that because the expenses are so high, the profits are low. So yes, I'm selling something for $10 a piece, but because it cost me to get this ready and to get this delivered, it cost me $9 or £9.50, but I don't really have much profit. Or so that could be one reason, right? So when it comes to expenses, we talked about it last time, that some of the risks for a da'i are their own effect on their sincerity, their desensitization of sins because of them hanging out with non and new Muslims. They may be seeing sins that are major, but they may have to be keeping quiet about it because of prioritization. So you might be prioritizing something that is of a higher value and ignoring something of a lower value. But you're thinking about it, you're talking about those sins, and that can affect your own iman and your own actions as well. Or you may get confused because you're interacting with someone who is more eloquent or more philosophically trained than you are. So we talked about these things and how to prevent that, such as being focused on yourself and hanging out in good company and hanging out with people that you can look up to. So okay, so now what about expenses are in check, right? So you understood the risks with da'i, those are in check. Still sales are high but profits are low. What else could go wrong? That's something very important to think about. What else could go wrong? So I'd like to give you a few seconds to think about it, and it's important for you to think about it. Think about a business, okay? Sales are high, expenses are in check. So now if I sell something for $10 or £10, it's costing me, let's say, £3 or £4. So that means I'm still having 50% margin. So I have a lot of profit margin now, right? But at the end of the year, if I look at my bank statement, I don't have cash. What happened? I had high profit margin, right? What else can go wrong? So let's see if you can figure it out. Any businessmen here? Should I wait till everybody gives me an answer for that, or at least someone gives me an answer for that? What can go wrong? All right, let's wait for this for a second. Let's let this sink in while I enjoy my espresso. Yes. So what can go wrong is basically 1, 2, 3 refunds, right? So you might be having a product that you're selling, but after a week, customer comes in and say, hey, I don't want it, refund. And then you give him the $10 back. So you were celebrating the sales, but then when you look at your statement, you're like, okay, we sold like 100, but then we refunded 99 items. So basically after a year, we only sold 1. So then you'd be like, okay, there's something wrong. You know, I need to figure out why my customers are refunding it. You know, what's going on? What can I do better for my customers to have a better experience with the product or the service? So this brings us to the notion of customer success teams. So if you have basically experienced any of the new products from this century or this last 5 years, you know, such as Uber, Amazon Prime, Amazon, anything that you have, you know, may have experienced, you see they invest a lot of time in community development, or what they call customer success teams. So the idea is not about support. So support is like you're using a product and something does not work and you call them up and say, hey, it's not working, you know, can you help me fix it? But rather you're being proactive to ensure that the customer is happy with the product. The customer understands how to implement a product. The customer is not overwhelmed with the product. Rather, they can use it one step at a time. They'll probably use 1 or 2 features of the product. Then they'll say, wow, this has a lot of value in my life. This has a lot of value in my personal life or my business experience. And then you show them the next features. And then the customer actually becomes an advocate of your product, and you know the product spreads by word of mouth. So it's a difference, showing some difference between customer success focus versus customer support focus. So it's proactive versus reactive, long-term versus short-term. It drives the value of the product versus it resolves issue. It generates revenue, and it's not a revenue center. So it's very important to understand this mindset shift. And the reason being is, and I'll explain why it's important for us. So when we talk about our post-Shahada audience, somebody who has taken Shahada, what has happened, right? Does that mean that the person has enrolled in a university and is ready to learn and is hungry for knowledge? Or, you know, they've just like crossed the border and they are intellectually and logically convinced it makes sense in their heart, but they still have their own old habits. They have their desires, they have their existing culture, and obviously they have shaitan that's going after them. So if you have witnessed a Shahada before, right? Think about it. How was that seen when you experienced, or when you witnessed someone taking a Shahada, hopefully in live and not just like a video. So you may have seen these things, right? You may have seen, you know, ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah, right? And then you may have seen it being said in English, and you may have seen the hugs. You may have seen a big gift box, right? But the point is, what happens after that? What happens after all the hugs? So as we think about that, let's think about these questions. Is it true that new Muslims usually have a stronger iman than born Muslims because they chose to be Muslims? New Muslims need extra support because of their situation. New Muslims are more tested than other Muslims. So what is your assumption? What is your gut feeling about these questions? Let me pause for a second and let you think about these questions. So the answer to these questions is no. This is not necessarily the case that the answer to these questions is a yes. It's not the case. But it depends on situation to situation. A new Muslim may not have a stronger iman than a born Muslim. It depends on what kind of conversion they had, what kind of reversion, what kind of shahada they had. Was it like, you know, okay, it makes sense, or are they fully committed? It depends. In most cases, no. Most cases, no. It could be they may not need extra support because of their situation about Islam. They may need extra support because of other reasons, but not necessarily because of them choosing Islam. And it's not true that Allah may test a new Muslim more than a born Muslim. So the question then becomes, okay, what are some of the common challenges that are faced by new Muslims? So here are some of the common challenges that you can also think about. Now, my point is for you to realize 2 things. Number 1, these challenges do not exist necessarily because of Islam. These are social challenges. These are challenges that anyone can face, a Muslim or a non-Muslim. And these could be existing challenges, okay? Yes, some of the challenges may come in because their families are abandoning them, but that's not common. That's not the norm. Sometimes it can happen. And also realize that when you're talking about these challenges, you're talking about from a support perspective. You're not talking about it from a reverse success thing, because, okay, so this person is having issue with this, let me try to support him with it. That's still a support mentality, which is important, but it's not the proactive mentality that I'm talking about that we'll be focusing on. So my question was earlier, right? So after the hugs and the kisses and the takbir and the gift boxes, what happens? So this is what happens, right? The person is still occupied by social media, by their friends, by their relatives, by their bad habits, by their own desires, by shaitan distracting them, and so on and so forth. So they still have to deal with that. It does not mean that, you know, they have put aside everything else and they're so focused on, you know, coming for Fajr tomorrow. So here's a video story that you guys are encouraged to check out. And obviously we send out the slides. If you're watching the recording, you can contact us, and I'm sure that we'll get you the slides and so on and so forth. So you will have the slides and you'll have the links that are mentioned in the slide. Okay, so our review should be what? Should we think about that, hey, this guy's ready to come to Fajr tomorrow and he wants to learn and so on and so forth, and he's in a troubled situation because his family is going to kick him or her out? Is that the default view that we should be going in with? Or should we consider having a view like that? Look, the person is returning to Islam, the person is interested in Islam, and he's signing up for a free trial at the gym. Does not mean that he will keep coming every day. We have to work towards it, okay? And we don't have to forget the competition, the shaitan that told Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that promised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I will keep coming to them from behind them, in front of them, from their right and from their left, and you will not find most of them thankful to you. So again, another way of looking at it is, what do we think? What are the stages? So someone is a non-Muslim, someone gets interested in Islam, then someone, you know, talks about it, discusses, researches, whatever, and takes shahada. And after the shahada, is it just like a straight line graph, is a straight path, or there are different stages to it? So before me giving you the answer from my experience, I'll just let you guys think about it. Okay, so now let's talk about why we should invest. The stages, we'll talk about it later. In the meantime, it will hopefully sink in and you will be thinking in the background. The question is, why is it important to invest in post-shahada? Somebody is taking shahada, you can choose, okay, that's fine, you know, let me go and, you know, give the da'wah to someone else, or you can choose to now invest in that person. Or as a masjid, as an organization, you can say, okay, the person has already taken shahada, you know, he or she will just keep coming and we don't have to worry about it. We can focus on more open houses, we can focus on going out, which are important, right? But the question is, should there be a balance, or should it be like, don't worry about it and keep going forward? So here's a look. First of all, what possibilities can happen from the new Muslims? One option is they can leave Islam, right? They just like to get, just like how someone signs up for a free gym trial membership and then leaves it. Or some of these things can happen. So this is one of the brothers, you know, the earlier story I mentioned, the video story of how this brother, when he decided to practice Islam, he went to a mosque and he was given a gift box and left on his own. And he basically went away, looked at the flyers and like, okay, it's too much for me. I don't know how to go about it. There was no customer success for that person. Nobody was there to show him how to, you know, start implementing Islam and how to benefit from it. So he continued with his life. He married non-Muslims, had kids with them. And alhamdulillah, finally, you know, he got in touch with us through a video that he saw. And, you know, we talked about Islam and how to gradually develop, and, you know, talked about the different situations he was in. Alhamdulillah, in 2018, he completed his Hajj. So he completed all the 5 pillars, alhamdulillah. So, you know, these are some of the great possibilities that can happen when you actually focus on reverts, when you actually focus on developing them, and you actually focus on their success. You know, there's another brother, I've never met this brother, you know, he's from US, you know, somebody introduced me. I just had, like, you know, video calls like this, like how I'm talking to you guys, similar video calls, Google Hangout, you know, talking about his concerns, you know, his career plans. He moved to various countries. So whenever he moved to a different country, I try to connect him with people locally on the ground. And, you know, finally one time we had an opportunity. He was in Riyadh. I connected him with a team in Jeddah. and they facilitated to take him to Umrah. So alhamdulillah, great things can happen like that. There are some other testimonials, WhatsApp chats, things like that, that show that it's very important for people to be followed up with. Inshallah, I'll let you guys read that when you get the slides, and so on and so forth, right? So there are many examples. Some of them we have done a holistic development. So this is something that we'll talk about part 3 of Convert Coaching. So today's part 1. In part 3, we'll talk about more holistic development. So this is when we'll be touching about these types of deeper results. This was a brother. He was very reluctant to go to masjid. Psychological issues, confidence issues. So talking about it with him, giving him confidence. And this brother also, he's not in the picture, but I was just developing him, talking to him, mentoring him, coaching him remotely without having met him. And then, finally, he builds up the courage to start going to the masjid. He sends me a picture from there. So there are many other success stories like that. So you can click on this link and you will see many, many success stories. The reason being I'm sharing with you this is so that you can see that, yes, it's not easy. Not everyone will respond like that. People will be reluctant. People will be lazy and slow. But as a team, we can have a lot of success stories. Okay. So again, why develop new Muslims? Well, first of all, there are new Muslims that are coming into the system. Even with the proactive dawah efforts, or even without the effort, there are many people coming into Islam. So it's something that's already being brought to us. And how do we now deal with it? How do we, play our part, play our role in developing them? So from a Quranic example, I would like to challenge you to think about it. Especially from a dawah team. So what I've seen with a lot of dawah teams is that they would go in, give the shahada, but after that, give them a pamphlet, a prayer brochure, or a gift box, or a card for the masjid, and they would move on giving dawah to other non-Muslims. Is that a good mindset? Is that a good approach? This is what Quran says about something like that. Quran says, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّتِي نَقَضَتْ غَزْلَهَا مِن بَعْدِ قُوَّةٍ أَنْكَافًا. So we're just concerned with the first part in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that do not be like the one who undoes her threads which she has spun after it has become strong. Someone who's like knitting and spinning, and then it becomes a strong thread, and then she undoes all the work that she has done. So sometimes really, when I look at some of the dawah teams, it just seems like that. That hey, you put in all the effort, you took dawah training, you did the flyering, you talked to the person, you came out in the cold or in the summer, you talk to the person, and then you let it go for the shaitan to come and take it away. It's not a smart activity there. Okay, now from a hadith example, what is the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his prophetic guidance and with the wisdom that Allah has blessed him in how to develop and how to do the dawah? So when he is instructing Mu'adh radiallahu anhu, look how he says, first of all, it's about prioritization. So first thing, tawheed. So when you are talking to them, as we discussed in the last 2 webinars, the importance of the who, not the why behind Islamic rulings, okay? So the importance of tawheed, and then he's giving him a complete package. He's not saying, okay, once they have taken the shahada, once they agree to the tawheed, you leave them. No, now you have to continue the da'wah until they're able to establish the salah. And between the shahada and the salah, there may be several stages. So you have to keep doing that until that happens, and then the next pillar, and so on and so forth. So it's a complete package. It's not a prophetic way for people to give da'wah and then, leave it for someone else. So another angle of looking at it is, you tell the product to a person, you show it to them, you share it with them, you bring the interest, you raise the awareness, and then you leave it for the competitor that we have talked about several times now, and that is ash-shaytan. Okay. Now, there's a very important example from the life of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that really shows the importance of paying attention to new Muslims when compared to non-Muslims. So we'll see a great example from the seerah on a comparison on focus on a new Muslim or focus on a Muslim that requires help compared to giving da'wah to a non-Muslim. We'll see that example at the end. So let's see if you guys can think about that, in the meantime as well. Okay, so now we are going to be talking about some of the efforts that we can put, just the 20-80 rule, that 20% of your effort can get you to 80% of impact. So we want to talk about and think about some of the basic things that we can start doing from a post-Shahada perspective, from a new Muslim mentoring perspective, from a new Muslim success experience perspective. Okay, I think it's also a good time for me to pause a second or two, just see if you have any questions for what we have been talking about so far. Because so far what we have been talking about is to understand what's happening, understand the why, and now we'll be getting into the how of things. So go ahead, questions, or put it in your chat. Okay, so let's continue. So, number one, when we are talking about new Muslim in this series, part one is today, 2 more parts are going to be happening, inshallah. What do I mean by new Muslim? Okay, that's very important. Again, remember, we're trying to clarify the objectives, trying to clarify the goals, trying to clarify the metrics. It's important to understand what I mean by a new Muslim, or what do you mean by a new Muslim? For me, new Muslim is basically anyone who is interested in Islam, calls himself a Muslim, but may not be, practicing even the Salah. It doesn't know, the importance of Salah, does not pray Salah. I would call him or her a new Muslim for my purpose, okay? And that is because the whole training can actually be applied to a person who is a born Muslim, but it's just a cultural Muslim. You can take the same principles and apply it to that. And so when I'm mentoring new Muslims, I do have some people who are born Muslims, but they're really not practicing Islam. Okay, so that's what I would say. Okay, so it's not related to the time. It's not related to the person taking a Shahada yesterday. Somebody could have taken Shahada 3 years ago. Somebody could be a born Muslim, but still, in that state. Now they're getting serious. Now we are trying to engage with them for whatever reason. So that would still come under the same category. The question becomes, how do you find them? Where would you find them? So now you get all this training, and you're like, okay, let me try to establish some new Muslim mentoring or new Muslim coaching relationships. Where would you find them? So here are some of the examples. Look around you, in your family members, your colleagues, and people who are not practicing. Find interesting ways to start a discussion about the importance of Islam. Say, hey, you know what? For example, say I was going to a Dawah course. I want to, discuss this with you because I have learned techniques, and I want to discuss this with you so I can brush on my techniques. And while doing that, you will talk about the importance of the creation, importance of the test, the story of Adam alayhi salam, importance of worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so on and so forth. And the person may get interested, or you may see the person being interested, and you may say, hey, you know what? I'm also getting this training on how to coach and develop someone to gradually, without being overwhelmed, develop their relationship with Allah. Do you want to join me as a buddy in that? And you can use that as a pretext to start developing someone. You may see some people who are not practicing, but they may be going through some tough times in their life. That could be a good way to discuss the world view, that this world is temporary, the punishment in the hereafter, the luxuries in the hereafter, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's one. It could also be people who are a bit uncomfortable with their life. They don't know why they exist. They're afraid of death. They don't have clarity and purpose of life. You can engage them with the purpose of life, the Dawah side of things, and then developing them. Someone may start noticing a lot of emptiness in their life. Same thing. You may start seeing new faces in the masjid, especially Ramadan is coming. You'll see a lot of people coming in Ramadan. If you have a team like that, you can say, hey, we have a team for people who want to start with the basics, who want to not be judged, who want to develop themselves, and who want consistent and continuous growth. We have a team and programs for that. Would you be interested in that? So right now I'm just talking about how would you initiate some conversation like that. The whole how package will come later. You may also have, converts from reworked marriages. A lot of time, someone brings in a man or a woman and say, okay, I want to marry the person, and they've just converted, right? So the imam or whoever is in charge for that can pass on those contacts or offer them that, hey, look, we have these type of programs, and they can actually be, enrolled in the program. Now, one thing that I really use for, marriages, for example, is that, look, especially when a new couple comes in, right? There's a lot of, new love, excitement, and so on and so forth. So one of the examples I like to use is like, how long do you guys want to be together? Be together forever in paradise. And for you guys to be able to be together forever in paradise, you both need to connect and have a better relationship with Allah, and consistently develop a relationship with Allah, so that you can both be together in paradise. And we're not judging anyone. A revert can have it, and the born Muslim may not have it. The revert may go to paradise, and the born Muslim may not be able to join him or her, and vice versa. So as you are talking about love and relationship, you can bring in that whole worldview into that as well, so you're giving them the right knowledge. Another thing I've noticed in especially here, a lot of people use websites like meetup.com. So, and then different people advertise different types of events on there. So a lot of people who are lacking spirituality in their life, they may search for things like spirituality, meditation, calmness. So if you want to put in some events under that category, especially designed for those people, that could be good. And again, I'm talking about meetup.com. Maybe something else works for your locality, something else works for your society, for your time. So it's important to be aware that not only putting the events on Muslim websites or your masjid websites, but also on websites that are being used by the mainstream society. So obviously the stages, it starts with the shahada. Right, so when somebody takes shahada, it's very, very important what kind of conversation we have, and we'll be talking about it in the next webinar, more importantly. But today we'll just be touching on that. So what happens today is somebody says, oh, mashallah, brother, welcome, all your sins are forgiven, make dua for us, and that's about it. And sometimes, if the person would take shahada in the masjid there, and I would bring them in my office, and be like, okay, brother, what do you understand about Islam? A lot of time they're talking about, oh, brotherhood, sisterhood, one body, and they don't realize the responsibility. I mean, the person who has given them the shahada or called them into Islam haven't even explained that, look, you have understood the worldview now, right? You know the path to paradise, you know the path to Jannah, you know the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if you're not driving your car on that highway, you're not driving your car on that motorway, and you're exiting too soon, you're not going to get to your destination. I'm not saying to start consistently driving on the motorway towards your destination, and leave everything else. But you have to be able to understand that you have to keep making progress. Otherwise, just the awareness of it will not benefit you. So this is super important that they're clear on what does the shahada means. Okay, but it's when you say that la ilaha illallah, that there is no one worthy of my full submission, my full trust, my full love except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you are true in your statement, then your action should follow it. Otherwise, how many doctors do we have who say that smoking is bad, smoking kills, but they still smoke, right? So actions speak louder than words, and if you truly understand something, a smart person will act upon it, even though they may have some shortcomings, but they're making progress towards action. So now on our 2080 rules, the first thing is when you meet a convert, or when your masjid meets a convert, or the imam meets a convert, what should their priority be? Should the priority be to give them the business card of the masjid, or to say, hey, you know what, we have a convert coach team, and here's the brother's contact, here's the sister's contact, call them? Is this a good idea? Think about it, and share your answers if you can in the chat box. But think about it, is this a good idea to give them your contact card? Or is there something better that we can do? Think about it. What would a smart businessman do? Yes, they give business cards, but there's something else that they try to do. And you guys who are attending the webinars, actually, we have already done that to you, if you think about it. When you were attending the webinar, what happened? Right? You gave your email address. You gave your contact information. We could have just said, put the link on our website, but this helps us reach out to people. So likewise, your priority should be to get their contact information. So in my masjid, if I'm not around, they understand that, look, the first thing we can do is try to get their contact information, say we will contact you. The brother or the coach, the mentor will contact you, and so on and so forth. Or the sister will contact you, get their information. If they're hesitant, if they're reluctant, then you say, okay, you know what, please give us a call, or please come in at this time and have a meeting with their brother or sister. So that's very important. Now, here is something else that we can do, like overall a structure, because you have different roles, different things that needs to be delivered. Here is a suggested structure. So the way I like to look at it is, in your team, you have 4 types of people in general. So you have your proactive du'ats or convert coaches who are basically the people, the frontline people for customer success or for viewer success, okay? Their focus is to develop them, to teach them, to guide them, to encourage them, to inspire them. They are proactive. Now, they don't have to necessarily do everything. They can do it if they choose to, but that's not their prime responsibility. And then you have others who are not going to be proactive. They may not call the person, but they're very good teachers. So if I have a convert and I can encourage them, I can make a commitment and I can remind them. And if he doesn't come, I can follow up. But I say, okay, when you come in, brother so-and-so or sister so-and-so will teach you how to make wudu. And then I'm following up with them. I'm seeing how their progress is. I'm inspiring them. I'm setting goals with them. So what a convert coach does, we'll talk about it in details later, some of it today and some of it in the following webinars. But then the passive teacher's job is to just teach that 1 or 2 things while being friendly to that person. So a passive teacher would be convert sensitive. So he or she may not say, hey, why do you have this tattoo? Or why do you have these earrings in your ears? Or why are you not wearing a hijab? Why is your dress inappropriate? They won't do that because they understand that the person is new, and they only teach them that, look, it's important for us to make wudu before standing in front of Allah. This is how we make wudu. This is how we say Fatiha. So they're sensitive to not correct everything else that's going on in their life. And they're also sensitive to be easygoing, to not go after perfection. So not to start teaching them, okay, this is alif, this is lam, but help them pronounce alhamdu, even if they have to write it like A-L-H-A-M-D, whatever, right? So that's a different topic, we can talk about it. Then you have general helpers. So you may have some people say, okay, brother, I know you do this. If you need any help, let me know. And you may have a list of people who are, maybe a WhatsApp group or something, and you say, hey, a convert needs to be picked up for Friday khutbah, or he or she is sick, can someone go and visit them? Or, can someone bring food for them? Or can someone pick them or drop them or whatever, okay? And so on and so forth. But again, that group of people will have to be sensitive to not bring upon unimportant topics, to not start talking about the ingredients in a toothpaste, not start talking about whether it's permissible to invest in cryptocurrency, whether it's permissible to buy car insurance, whether it's permissible to eat in that restaurant, because those are not important things at this stage. Let the convert coach decide that, so they won't bring up these type of things. They're also convert sensitive. They understand the convert dynamics, but they're just there to do this ad hoc general help. Then you can also have PR and social people who would do basically make sure that people are aware of this service that your organization provides. They would also be helpful. So for example, one of the things that we do is sometimes instead of doing rewards only dinners, it helps to bring them into community events. So as you know that different people in the community are having walima or aqiqah or different events, or masjid is having a barbecue, different things are happening. So these people would connect and let the coaches know that, hey, we have we spoke to the person invited us, and he said that you can bring in 5 or 10 converts. So the coaches will know, okay, you know what, let me invite her, let me invite him, and so on and so forth. So this way they can also be integrated in the general community, and they get these social experiences without you investing a lot of time and money in arranging social events which are convert only. Okay, now here's some of the things in regards to the general musallin, the general community, when it comes to convert. So some of that people think that converts should only be introduced to converts. That's not true, right? So a good coach would try to have a good network or access to a good network and try to make connection based on the aptitude, based on the age, based on interest, and different things like that. Sometimes a convert may not be a great friend of a convert because, yeah, they have something in common. They're both converts, but nothing else is in common. So, let's not have any stereotypes and any assumptions here. Another thing could be, as we mentioned, about social. Now, another thing that I like to do, and I have a lecture on that as well, it's called like top seven ways we fail for converts and stuff like that. And that is to educate the general public that, look, Amr bil Ma'ruf, correcting other people have a lot of rewards. But that only happens if your correction will lead to more good. A lot of time, converts may be feeling very uneasy because they come in and someone is trying to correct them, even if they're praying a wrong position in the salah, or they are making a wrong thing in their wudu. It may be very disappointing for them. It may be turning them off, knowing that someone is watching me, and most people don't like to be corrected. So if you have to explain to the general public that if you see someone new and you see something wrong, try to bring it up to the attention of the convert coach. So ask the person, hey, you know, I haven't seen you before. Assalamu alaikum, my name is this and that. What's your name? Welcome, good to see you here. You know, we have a program for new people and stuff like that. Are you aware of that? He or she may say, yeah, I have a coach, I have a mentor I'm working with. Okay, great, who is it? Oh, okay, brother such and such, sister such and such. Okay, and then the brother or the general public can give this feedback to the coach. Or if they don't have a coach, then they can try to connect them with a coach. But it's important, a lot of time, you know, people are not coming because they are shy. They get embarrassed by people correcting them. Another thing that the general community does is to have, you know, political statements, ethnic statements, and other comments in which they are generalizing other cultures and people from other cultures. And they may say things not realizing that, look, you know, this person is coming from this culture. They have parents and brothers and sisters who are coming from that culture, and not everyone in the culture is same. So we have to be careful about, you know, what comments we are making. And another thing is, like, someone would take a new Muslim and put them in a WhatsApp group. Now, if you don't know what kind of stuff is happening in that WhatsApp group, right, that's not a good idea. Sometimes I don't do that usually. I keep it like one-on-one, or it will be a very restricted group in which only you have to be very careful about who is in there, how trained they are, what topics will they be discussing. You don't want to make it overwhelming and, you know, confusing for the convert. So that's very important to keep in attention. And sometimes I've even seen, like, you know, a lot of converts just going on social media and, you know, signing up for these, you know, new Muslim support groups. SubhanAllah, they have people from all across. Just like, imagine some of the groups have, like, you know, people from Pakistan, Egypt, Middle East, and it could be like remote areas of these countries. And now you're dealing with a Westerner, and if he or she asks a question, you're answering it in your own context, right? It just becomes a mess. So, you know, we have to educate the converts and not to, you know, get themselves into these type of situations, and also discourage these type of situations and do the best that we can. So remember, I talked to you guys about the new Muslim stages, right? So let's talk about that. So I think in the first stage, we have to work on strengthening the Shahada. Just because they pronounce the Shahada, it may not be very, you know, strengthened in them. They may not be having the desire to change their schedule to be able to perform 5 times of prayers, because, you know, they love their sleep. They love their waking up schedule. They don't want to take, you know, time off from work or studies or, you know, business and so on and so forth. So in this case, stage, it's very important for them to teach them that, look, you can talk to Allah anytime. The concept of dua. For them to focus on, you know, consuming Islamic content, whether it be YouTube, basic content, whether it be lectures, Friday halaqah, seerah, you know, discussing with them, reading Quran with them, and we'll talk about these, you know, in detail. But I just wanted to, you know, clarify the stages. After that, they may have the desire to learn and practice. So when you're teaching them, make sure you keep a good balance of technical and spiritual content. So if the convert says, okay, I can only come in an hour a week, and you just use an hour for them to learn Alhamdulillahi, Alhamdulillahi, right? And you know, you stand up first, and then you bow down second, and so on and so forth. What can happen is they may just get technical stuff, which is super important, but they did not learn anything about Allah. They did not read any Quran. So you have to work on making sure there's a good balance of spiritual and technical content. While this is all happening, okay, then they will start, you know, praying and coming to the Friday prayers and so on and so forth. Now, while this is happening, stage 5 is something that you can throw in depending on the person. So somebody might be like, you know, not interested in praying, but they are interested in coming to classes or halaqah. And some people are not into those type of things, but they are interested in coming for activities. So if you have a food bank or a group that goes out and distributes food to the homeless, or they go out to the, you know, shelters and so on and so forth, or they go out to visit the sick, they may be interested in activity and volunteering and giving dawah because they want to feel useful and part of an action. So think about, even if they haven't studied the salah, you can still, you know, connect them with those volunteer teams and give the, you know, the training to those teams to be revert sensitive, and, you know, what to bring when and so on and so forth. So having said that, now here are some of the resources that we have for new Muslims. I mean, for you as you're developing them. So again, I mentioned that earlier last week on the Dawah webinar. So on the channel, you'll see, presenting Islam. This can come in handy for you to strengthen their shahada. This can come in handy when they need you to help them talk to their family members, their friends, and their colleagues about Islam and so on and so forth. There are also, live Dawah dialogues. The blind spot playlist actually shows that, look, sometimes the person has taken shahada, but they don't really understand what shahada means. So some of the videos show that. Then I talk about the first conversation. So somebody took shahada, okay, or you're having a first meeting with a new Muslim. What would you talk about? How would you initiate that relationship? And then there are, examples of coaching and coaching ideas and mindset. And then finally, Quran Study Circle playlist, which is basically, whenever you have a follow-up meeting with the reverts or converts, you actually discuss and read some of the translation together, and you think about the points of benefits from that. So these are the playlists. Okay, so there are lots of resources as well, with links to how to perform prayers, common issues that they come up with. Let me show you an example. So for example, this is a document, right? So you can see a lot of stuff that people talk about. And if you just go and open the document and you press Control F to search in the document, you can search for bad habits or Eid or prayer or knowledge, seeking knowledge, or depression, anxiety, laziness, trials, fitness. And you'll see stuff that you can use to develop and empower your person that you're developing and empowering or coaching. So what is it like to be a convert coach? Let me pause here as we're going into this new section and see if there are any questions. It's also a good idea for you to digest what we have been talking about so far. Okay, let's continue. So a convert coach, when you become a convert coach, it helps you. First of all, it helps you, be more productive, helps you to understand yourself because you're understanding someone else. You should start by understanding yourself. Okay, it helps you achieve your full potential by, time management, focusing on your growth areas, and so on and so forth. Here's a potential commitment that can look like. You can say, hey, I'm only going to commit an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. And part of that time, you definitely want to invest in your own personal growth as well as your spiritual growth. So you can't just say, okay, I'm going to be spending all my time with converts and non-Muslims, but I'm not spending any time in my own personal development. We talked about it earlier that you could risk a lot of desensitization. So you have to be getting your own spiritual fuel as well. So a coach understands them. He understands what motivates them, what are their passions, what are their values, why did they come into Islam, what was their primary trigger, what are the values or things that they're running away from, what is it that they dislike. So having that understanding, you can balance your focus on love of Allah, the rewards from Allah, as well as the punishment from Allah. So you can have a good focus if you understand the person that you're mentoring. So you would inspire them, you would motivate them on why it's important for them to keep growing in all areas of their life, especially in their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You would have a clear expectations of what their goals are. You would help them set their goals, and we'll walk you through all that. But right now we're just trying to understand an overview, okay? And you'll try to challenge them a bit, try to help them stretch some goals, not be too comfortable, not be over pushed, so on and so forth. You would empower them by making connection, by giving them ideas, by sharing stories. And then when you follow up, you hold them accountable. Okay, so you set this goal, what happened? Right, so you're becoming an accountability partner. And then you'll discuss how can they be, reaching their goals in better, right? And how can they use different things to help them reach their goal in a more consistent fashion. You're someone that deeply cares about them, who understands the dawah, because sometimes you may have to answer a question from a dawah angle. That's what we talked about in the first 2 webinars. You share reminders with them, because reminder benefits the believers. You don't overwhelm them, and you're proactively checking in. You're not just a support person. Okay, if you have any problem, give me a call. No, you're proactively helping them make progress and make them successful. And obviously, don't forget the power of dua for your own self as well as for the person that you are mentoring. So here's a testimonial from a coach, right? So somebody might say, well, this is so overwhelming, I don't think I can do that. So, alhamdulillah, by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have developed people who didn't have any experience on developing other people. And actually, as you can see from the testimonial, it helped them develop themselves, be more focused, increase their own learning, and were able to help other people. Okay, now, finally, remember I told you earlier that we'll share with you an example from the life of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the importance of convert coaching, on the importance of developing leaders, as opposed to going forward and doing more and more dawah. Okay, so let's see if anybody was able to guess it. If you were not, I'm just going to give you a few seconds to think about it and see if you can see a clear example from the life of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So here it is. Famous surah, Surah Abas, in Juz 30. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about an incident in which the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was faced with two options. One was a companion who was already Muslim, and he was a blind companion who wanted to know something about Islam. And the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was giving da'wah to an influential non-Muslim, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directed him to prioritize the da'wah, the support, the teaching of this companion over the non-believer or the disbeliever, subhanallah. Right, so that really puts a clear example of how our priorities should be. Now you say, no, I'm not talking about to drop everything that we do, to drop the dawah efforts, to drop the proactive dawah effort, but to have a balance. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah At-Tawbah, right? So when it comes to proactiveness, when it comes to learning, there's a good balance. That not everyone has to do the same thing. So some of them doing forward proactive stuff, and some of them staying behind learning the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, these verses can be applied in a lot of different situations. So we have to understand the principles. So some of them going forward and some of them learning the religion and teaching it to people, and so on and so forth. Okay, so where do we go from here? So now the idea is basically for us to start thinking about spreading the deen to the people who are just namesake Muslims, as well as people who are clearly non-Muslims, as well as people who are on the edges, and so on and so forth. So some of the ways that you can do, obviously make dua for this, raise awareness for this, especially within dawah communities, dawah teams who may be very proactive but not spending time on reward development. Raise these questions, ask the questions. So you may see a lot of people sharing on social media, shahada happening, and a lot of people, clapping and cheering for them. Go after a month and say, what happened to the brother that you shared a picture or video about? Did anybody from your team contacted them? What was the last time you contacted them? So sometimes we have to ask these questions because people are autopilot. They give dawah, shahada, video, picture, celebration, next. Same thing continues, but then nobody is challenging them. So sometimes we have to friendly challenge them and remind them of what's going on. Okay? Or maybe you say, okay, you know what? I'm going to develop a team in my community, in my masjid, and then you tell those dawah teams that, okay, look, when you find that, you send me the contact and I will take it over from there. Because it depends, right? Sometimes we may have to split. Sometimes one person should be doing dawah and development, dawah and development. If not, then you have people who are focused on dawah, and then you have people who are focused on revert success teams. Okay, so be the champion in your community, start a team, start the conversation, practice what you're learning, get better and better, think about this content, think about the situations, think about questions, and so on and so forth, and start creating a team within your neighborhood, within your community, within your masjid, your MSA, your ISOC, and so on and so forth. So you can keep in touch with us. If you have any questions, need any support, any assistance, inshallah, happy to do that. Now, I also like to have connection across the globe. As I said, sometimes I need to make connection with people on the ground. So if you're interested in something like that, please do put your information so you can be contacted. Like how we had in the example of the brother I showed you earlier, who I started talking to him while he was in the States, and he went to Morocco, He went to Egypt. He went to Malaysia, Indonesia, Bahrain, Saudi, and now he's in Hong Kong, right? So imagine having access to people all across. How much help was that? So we have some groups. For example, this is a WhatsApp group in which we announce, information for coaches. This is where we put content that Reverse can directly consume. So if you are working with Reverse, you can take this content and share it with your Reverse. Even if Reverse join this group, it's safe that we don't get anybody else to post there. So here's a situation, right? Now, this will show you something interesting. Is it compulsory upon a new Muslim to take bath after taking their Shahada? It is compulsory upon any new Muslim to change their name. It is compulsory upon any new Muslim men to get circumcised. A new Muslim woman cannot stay with her non-Muslim husband. So a lot of people take stances on these situations, and it's not a situation about halal or haram, but sometimes it may not even be a clear haram thing. It may be a makruh thing. And not only that, but more importantly, we also have to look at personal circumstances. Is the person willing to make that change? Because sometimes they may not be willing to make that change because they're just very new. And if you tell them that they have to make the change, they'll just leave their religion altogether. Or they may make the change, but they may get so depressed after that they cannot handle this challenge and they just start quitting everything. So it has to be very important. And that's why we have these case groups. So if you come across some situation, let's discuss it. Let's discuss the pros and cons. Let's discuss some experiences from other coaches. Let's contribute your own experiences before we tell them to do something. And this is some of the stuff that we'll be talking about, especially in part 3 and touching about that in part 2 as well. But anyway, so here are some video playlists that will deal with some of the questions. And this document, Empowering Muslims, is what I talked to you guys earlier about, in which how you can search about various topics in there. So these are some of your actions, right? Fill out the form. Now, in part 2, we'll be talking about what do you talk to them in the first meeting. If you want to get ahead with that, you want to see some example, you want to see some sample script so that you can start thinking about it before next webinar, go ahead and do that. So this is what we'll be talking about. So here's my question today for you guys. What was your key takeaway? What is the one thing that you learned today that you plan to implement? Let's now hear back from you guys. I'm gonna mute myself. And I want to see if there are any questions. What are your takeaways, your suggestions, your experience, so we can have a dialogue. And that's one of the advantages of doing a live webinar instead of you going through the recording, but we can have some live interaction. So go ahead, Bismillah. All right, then. So if there are no more questions, I guess we'll wrap up and we'll see you all next Thursday, inshallah. Shall we close the webinar? Then, Jazakumullah khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless the effort and help us to benefit from what we have learned of benefit. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.